Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Tea with Bestie. I'm drinking coffee today, per usual, with MCT oil. What beverage are you drinking? I'm really excited to have you here today on Sobriety Bestie channel to talk about
Good
sharing.
morning, good evening.
Oops, let me
wherever
turn
you
this
are
volume
in the
down.
world. Welcome.
To talk about sharing the message, not the mess. You've heard that before, right? In the rooms of AA. Share the message, not the mess. This came up this week. So if you don't know, we have a free community called Deprogram Lounge. If you're watching on YouTube, it is the first link below, or you can go to sobrietybestie.com/lounge to get in there. And we have Zooms, we have a book club, and on our book club call this week, which was on the Real AA, we did a video on the Real AA this week as well on Sobriety Bestie podcast. But in that book club, somebody was talking about how sharing the message, not the mess, that propaganda piece, that piece of the ideology, how it's actually quite harmful. So I thought that'd be a great topic for today for us to discuss the different ways that the whole sharing the message, not the mess, can actually be harmful to us. As a starting off place for our conversation today. So yeah, tea with Bestie. Let me know. Drop it in the comments what you're drinking, whether you're catching the replay or watching in live. Let a bestie know what you're drinking, what you're vibing. I know there's a lot of people who tune in from like the UK or Europe. There's some people tuning in from New Zealand and Australia. Some people from United States. So we have global community here. People are evening, nighttime, all the vibes. So yeah, let a bestie know what you're drinking. All right. So on the topic of, 48K says UK. There's so many people in the UK. I've noticed there are so many people in the UK who are waking up to AA or 12-step being harmful and are actively deprogramming from it. It's like a huge, what I've seen in my limited experience, right? This is anecdotal information. I can only share with you what I'm experiencing, but I do hear from a lot of people. I'd say at this point, it's been thousands of people reading most of the comments, all the DMs that I get, the emails that I get. And there's a lot of people in the UK that are actively deprogramming from Alcoholics Anonymous. So yeah, welcome UK. It is tea time. It is tea time. All right. And then we have from recovery to discovery. Did y'all see John's video on Sobriety Bestie YouTube? His channel is From Recovery to Discovery. He says, good morning, all. Kirsten, you know my story, but an old timer told me to quit sharing the mess instead of the message. When I was crying and sharing, I was suicidal. Wow, I have so much empathy for this. Sometimes we just need to be heard and not told what to do. Sometimes we just need somebody to be there for us and not to have to be there for somebody else. It's brutal. Trish in progress says, USA with orange mango juice blend. What's up? Good morning, good afternoon. And Green Mountain Mama says kombucha here. I had a sponsor tell me she'd drop me if I didn't abstain from kombucha and kefir. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that for sure. And Kate says, hello, everyone drinking water. All right. Okay. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting topic. And then I started looking into it and I was like, there's actually a lot to hear. Why don't we actually like have it be our discussion? So sharing the message, not the mess. Okay. So number one, I'm going to walk you through some points. We'll have some discussion here. You know, I love this to be a conversation. Even if you're catching the replay, definitely join the conversation in the comments. These are meant to be, my intention really is to spark a conversation here. And so we can see what everybody is thinking. And we do that by understanding what other people are thinking in the comments, right? It's not just what I think, it's what you think, and it's what everybody else thinks. And we can wake up to more critical thinking by seeing the comments. So that's why I always encourage the comments if you feel comfortable to do that. Okay, so number one, the doctrine of, or the slogan, but really it's propaganda of share the message, not the mess, or it's not really propaganda. That would more be a doctrine, a piece of the ideology, a piece of the control, a piece of the thought reform, or the that shapes our thoughts and our behavior and our action and how we see ourselves, right? So number 1, it replaces authentic expression with scripted speech. Did you ever feel that the whole rhetoric of share the message, not the mess, um, got in the way of your authentic expression and made you be into scripted speech? We've heard it said before, like parroting the ideology or being a sheep or being a walking big book. You've probably heard some of these phrases. Some of them are more, I don't know. I guess I would nobody wants to be called a sheep or a parrot, but it's kind of also when you're repeating what everybody always says, that's kind of what parroting would be, right? Okay. So early on, and this is what was brought up on our book call this week. By the way, if you want to join the Deprogram Book Club, if you're not already in it, our book right now is The Sober Truth by Lance Dobbs. Let me actually grab that. I didn't know I was going to mention it. So if you wanted to join our book club or you wanted to read along with us this month, we are reading The Sober Truth. It's called Debunking the Bad Science Behind the 12-Step Programs and the Rehab Industry by Lance Dobbs, MD, and Zachary Dodes. I really like this one because it's like scientific. There's a lot of research linked to this. He's a medical doctor. So yeah, I felt like it was really a fascinating book. So we're reading all the books. We're doing all the things as a group. You don't have to read the book. You can still come to the book club and hear us talk about it. And I'll actually drop my book review, or yeah, I guess it's a book review of this book the morning that we have our book club, which is in a couple of weeks. Letting you time to read it. Okay, so early on, raw sharing. This is what came up this week in our Zoom call. That in the beginning, when we were sharing in AA meetings, it felt like we can just be ourselves. That's what this individual is saying. That's also my experience where I felt like I could just show up. I could share the mess. I was encouraged to share the mess. I was encouraged to speak. In fact, I was coerced to speak. I was made to feel like I had to speak, that I had to say yes to AA, and I was called on and then put on the spot. And then through panic attacks and tears and snot nose and all of that, I would share my mess, or my mess. I would share how I was actually feeling, what I was struggling with, what I was going through. I could be authentic and raw. And the more authentic and raw and real that I was in my mess, the more that I was rewarded with belonging and connection and invitations for coffee and guidance, the unsolicited advice, the indoctrination from other members and things like that. People would come up after the meeting and give me their number. So in the beginning, our authenticity is often, now my experience isn't the rule. Obviously, your experience might be different, but I was rewarded with all of these things for being authentic in the beginning. But that doesn't last, does it? We are only allowed to be totally authentic when we're a newcomer, not as a rule, but as a system, as a culture. It is culturally okay to be raw and real and all over the place and just let it rip when you're new. And often, when you get a little bit of time, you can see that part of that is that the people with more time up in AA are then reminded of how bad it was and grateful for what they have now because they're not like you, right? So that you become the example that they've moved past, so they feel better about themselves. They encourage you to be real, then they go home feeling good about themselves because they're not in your circumstance. I feel like that's kind of what the culture is. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so and later on in our sobriety journey, when we have a little bit of time, I feel like the switch for me happened around 2.5 years sober, somewhere between 2 and 3 years sober. It's like you're no longer really invited or approved or rewarded with belonging for sharing the mess. Now you have to share the message. You've done the steps. You know the deal. Your nervous system is maybe a little bit more stable. You got a little bit of time up. And you got to be carrying the message now. They say things like the first year is for you, every other year is for giving back, right? So now you're supposed to be in the step 12 of practicing these principles in all of your affairs. And so we stop expressing ourselves, not everybody, but there's a lot of pressure and conformity to stop expressing ourselves. And instead, it's to be the walking big book, be the speaking big book, to share about the ideology, to be reciting, to be parroting it, to be evangelizing, proselytizing, recruiting, or indoctrinating the group with our share. So our shares go from being authentic to being indoctrination. Now we're sharing about, you know, our spiritual awakening as having done the steps, or how our life is great, or how we're happy, joyous, and free, or how this is my experience with this step, or whatever. So now we've moved from just being like a normal human who's telling to sharing about themselves, to being somebody who knows all the things, and here's the ideology, and here it is. So I don't know. That's number one. Our authenticity becomes replaced with scripted speech. Now I want to see what all of y'all are vibing over here. Okay, so I'll just pull this one up. You know, I like to pull up all the comments. So Aiden says, were you or are you a Christian?" And then we have a follow-up, Green Mountain Mama saying, "This isn't really the venue for proselytizing." Um, where I stand is that I respect other people having a religion. If you're religious, if you're Christian, if you're anything, if you're Hindu, I respect that. Have your religion. That's great. I also want my own self to be respected, and to not have anybody put their religion on me. I feel like when people project their religious views onto one, or specifically me, I feel like that's violent, and I don't think anybody should be coerced into religion. And I was 100% coerced into religion inside Alcoholics Anonymous. So while I respect all religious views, I don't want anybody pushing their views on me. And I would never push my views on somebody else. And that's kind of how I feel comfortable saying that. Um, yeah, I think people get a lot out of religion. You know, Bali is a Hindu island, and they have, well, they have one main god, right? But they have lots of, I don't know, I guess, versions of God, or drops of God, or however you want to think about it. And I love that. I mean, I have a Ganesha. I'm not Hindu, but I have a Ganesha at my door, like they do in Balinese religion or tradition, where Ganesha protects the evil, from coming in the door. I just like that. I like that as a symbol. I love Ganesha. I love elephants, but so I respect other people's religions, but I'm not here to promote anybody's, or to promote religion in general. But I think respecting of other people's views is definitely a vibe, without having to coerce anybody into believing like you. Not like anybody was doing here. I'm just saying that's kind of how I feel about religion. And then we have AA has some Christian nuts. Yeah, well, there's definitely religious coercion in AA. AA is religious coercion, and I think that that's, to me, it's violent. It's violent to pressure somebody in to have the same beliefs as you, which is totally what AA is. Then we have Kate saying, "For me, absolutely, from being vulnerable and honest, sharing from the heart, I conform to sharing the message, the steps working. I don't remember if I was told, but I felt like it would make me belong." Yeah, it's not explicit, right? So a lot of the indoctrination isn't explicit. It's like modeled. We see how it works. We catch the vibe of what's going on in the meetings. So the culture can indoctrinate us. We see when certain people share certain things, they get rewarded or punished. Or you see somebody who has 8 years sober, and they talk about something that's not like, that's outside literature, or they talk about something that's outside of the ideology, or maybe they talk about having a bad day, and they don't wrap it up with what step helped them get through it or something. And then you could hear sometimes shares after them. Did you ever hear this? You hear people sharing in the meeting after them, as if they're correcting them or shaming them subtly, or bringing what was missing, like judging your shame as not right because you have a certain amount of time or whatever. And therefore you should have been sharing the message. Therefore I will, and I'll kind of condemn you sideways version, maybe explicitly outright, but it's usually like a sideways throw you under the bus subtly. Like we all know it's happening. So we pick up the vibe of what's happening in the meeting, or the culture. We soak up the culture that's not always explicitly said, like it's not written on the wall. Some things are written on the wall, like "live and let live" was framed in the clubhouse that I got sober in. Live and let live. There was slogans framed on the wall, or propaganda. But a lot of it is what we pick up from the culture. We see And we're intuitive beings, we're humans, we learn as we're babies what gets love and what doesn't get love, and then a lot of us conform to get that love, not everybody. Some of us become people pleasers or whatever, so we catch the vibe of how we get love in the meeting or how we get connection or how we get accepted, and then we become that over time. We don't have to be told, "You have to parrot the ideology to get loved." We see it. It's obvious, like, that's what it is. We don't have to be told to put our umbrella up to not get rain on our head. We kinda get it. You catch the vibe of, like, of what it is. Um, let's see. When All Was Cool says, "Love bombing, new recruits are showered with excessive affection, attention, and flattery to make them feel special and foster false sense of security." 100%. To me, the wild part of all of it is that I don't know how many of us are consciously aware of what we're doing or why we're doing it. I didn't understand love bombing when I got to AA. That's what happened to me. And I didn't understand that I was love bombing when I was in AA because I thought I was carrying the message, helping the newcomer, saving lives, all of that stuff, right? I was in the ideology. I was a true believer. So the people that are doing the indoctrination don't really get that they're doing the indoctrination and what exactly that means, even if they're the same ones who jokingly say, haha, but I need the brainwashing, right? We don't really get what that means when we're in it. Yeah, it's so bizarre. Okay. Green Mountain Mama says, the vague scripted speech is so boring. Agreed. I do wish I could take back some of the mess I shared, though. It's okay to not tell everyone everything. 100% coerced confession. Yeah, it's ridiculous, the coerced confession. Kate says, I have religious trauma from Catholic upbringing and schools and got shunned by family members for not baptizing my children. I believe in choice and my kids can choose what they want. Kate, I'm the same. I believe in choice. I think choice is the vibe, freedom, choice, autonomy, agency, all of that. Yeah. Mag says, I was on my way out of AA when doing a fifth step with a sponsee. I didn't want to drop her as it's such a valuable step, but I was mindful not to gaslight her trauma as being her fault. Yeah. A lot of us get told that our trauma is our fault or to look for our part in horrific things like childhood abuse and stuff. Um, and Green Mountain Mama replies, she lucked out with you. Yeah. The Muppet says, I actually don't hate religion until I didn't hate religion until I went to AA. Being told to pray or die was not helpful. Yeah. I feel like I understand religion a lot more now, having been coerced into AA religion and then deconstructed from AA religion. I just have a whole new view on religion now or belief systems in general. It feels very empowering actually to have that viewpoint, and it feels like I can protect myself, which that's the vibe, right? Self-empowerment is to see the systems and see things and then to choose. What do we want? There's nothing wrong with choosing. It's just that to be in the position of choosing. Kate says, in meetings, there's a lot of I relate with what's going on with you, but I work the steps, turned it over, et cetera, to solve it, but they tell you not to cross share. 100%. From recovery to discovery said, what's up, John? It's so true what you said. The old timers do get some kind of satisfaction out of hearing the newcomers mess. Then over time, you are expected to adapt to the language of the ideology. Yeah, there's like some sick pleasure in, well, I remember when I was that bad and now I feel good about myself because I'm better than you. There is some of that going on. It's, again, this is never like explicitly said, but it's the culture. It's just kind of weird to look at it from a deconstructed view, isn't it? Trish in Progress says, we had an old timer recently complain that the people were not sharing specifically about the issues with alcohol. The following week, his share was about falling while walking his dog. The rules apply to you, not me. Did anybody experience that? There's so many contradictions, aren't there? Kate says, I told my sponsees that 12 steps start with sharing the solution. Yeah. All right, let's go into number two. Number two The reason why, in my perspective, and opening up for a conversation with you on why share the message, not the mess is harmful, is number two, it reinforces indoctrination through repetition. To me, this is like the key of it all. How do we get controlled? How do we reform our thoughts? What is brainwashing? How does brainwashing work? Like when people say, AA, you can leave anytime, there's no locks on the doors and there's no gun at your head, right? That's like the common propaganda. But that's not how thought reform works. We get controlled through the words, and the way the words control us is they're repeated enough until we internalize them and believe them. And then the control is our own thinking, because we have beliefs have been planted into our brain and watered and nourished through the repetition, and then they become our reality. So we don't even know we can leave. So the people who always say you can leave AA, I'm like, but have you left, bro? Because if you've actually left, you'll realize it's not as easy as the door is right there. The reason why you haven't believed is because you think that you can't. That's the reason why we can't leave, because you don't even consider it. It's not even on the table as an option, because you believe the doctrine. You believe the dogma that to leave is to drink or to die, or that sponsoring people is the bright spot of your life, or whatever, right? So the indoctrination is reinforced through the repetition. So Bill's whole big idea, right? But his big idea in his business was that you stay sober by carrying the message to other alcoholics. It's one alcoholic helping another, right? Brilliant sales move to embed recruitment, free labor exploitation as your solution. So your system is going to perpetuate itself. That was such a big epiphany for me to realize that. But so Bill has planted the solution is promoting his program. So as you're saying to people, it works if you work it, it works if you work it, it works if you work it. Or you're saying whatever other part of the ideology as if it is fact or true or modern science or relevant at all to addiction recovery. You believe it because you keep saying it. You're making it alive for you. The indoctrination is happening through you. You can't help but get some of it on you when it's coming out of your mouth. You are soaking in the ideology as you are spitting it out on other people. So as you are carrying the message, you're soaking yourself in the message. So if you keep saying it works if you work it, and turn it over, pray about it, do the steps, whatever, then you're believing that that all works because you keep saying that it all works. We know about the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like you keep saying all this stuff is true, so it becomes true for you. And then Bill's whole problem was he kept saying it was all true, so it became true for him. He changed his mind around, like, if I say this, it's true for me, right? He's believing it because he keeps repeating it. But the people he was helping initially weren't getting sober. They weren't staying sober, but he was. That was his big epiphany. By saying it works for you. It doesn't just work. By telling people it works for you. So the recruiting makes it work for you. So yeah, it's a lot to unpack there. So speaking beliefs out loud strengthens them neurologically. It changes the structure and functioning of our brain to repeat things over and over again. A lot of people, when they leave AA and deprogram from it, maybe this is your experience, let me know in the comments, they'll say, I didn't become an alcoholic until I went to AA. That's certainly true for me. It wasn't until I got to AA and they kept saying, you're an alcoholic, you got to identify, you're in denial, this is your disease that thinks you're not an alcoholic, you're clearly a real alcoholic. And so there's all this pressure to conform, and then we do. And so then you have this identity locked in, and you have all these beliefs start to get locked in because you hear it all the time. And then it becomes your reality. What we focus on, you've heard where focus goes, energy flows. What we focus on tends to come about in our lives. So if we believe, we hear all this stuff and we repeat all this stuff, it starts to become like a reality for us. So repeating the AA language is self-programming. A lot of us, how we begin our deprogramming journey is we distance ourselves from the indoctrination, meaning we're not soaking in it anymore. We might not be saying it to others. We might not be hearing it as much. And because we go to less meetings, read the book less often, or talk about it less, it starts to lose some of its grip on us. Now, this might not be true for everybody. Let me know if that's your experience in the comments. By taking some space from AA, some of the hold of AA loosened its grip on you. I mean, the ideology doesn't just like fall out of our head. Deprogramming is an active phase. But by no longer being indoctrinated at like a more intense level, some of it is loosened. At least it for sure was for me. So we don't just believe the ideology, we're training ourselves to believe it through the repetition. It's one of those whole you say it enough times and it starts to feel true. Now, we don't even we know that this happens in the media, don't we? You say something enough times and people start to believe it, even if it's not true. Okay, let's look at some of the comments. Pamela says, repetition is the mother of all brainwashing. 100%. It is the repetition. And when we become the parrots, we are in the self-programming. We are keeping it active, alive in our brains. We know about neuroplasticity now. I think this is such an important thing to like in a deprogramming journey to like realize when Bill and the others wrote the big book and wrote the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or borrowed a lot of it from Frank Bookman's Oxford group, right? They didn't know about the brain can change. Neuroplasticity wasn't discovered or understood until a decade. I think it was about a decade after the big book was published. So they didn't know that we can change our brains like as science, as like reality. So yeah, repeating the same thing over and over again is gonna, what we fire together wires together. So if you keep saying, I'm an alcoholic, I'm powerless, I have a fatal progressive disease that wants me dead sober and all that stuff. Sorry, I should do a trigger warning before I throw the ideology out. Then we start to believe it. Exactly. The Muppet says, when my sponsee took his own life, oof. Yeah, it's hard to read. It's hard to hear about. I mean, we all know that this happens, but it's hard to read. I'm sorry to hear it. When my sponsee took his own life, I was told to go deeper into service. Wow. I ignored my grief, and it was so bad for my mental health. Yeah. God, this is like the worst part to me. This is the worst part. It's like all the deaths that happen inside AA. And then the Muppet says, they want you to die if you don't do the steps so they can be right. I mean, the most brutal line in AA might be, let me know what you think, that some have to die so others can live. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, that is not okay. It was somebody's death in AA who I felt AA was responsible for that initially cracked my brainwashing. The deaths are not okay. They're not okay. Pamela said, I left AA and wished death over and over. I left AA and was wished death over and over by cult members. God, it is so brutal. Stephen Evans says, I'm on the fence a bit. There was a lot of brainwashed idiots in AA and plenty of very human gossip problems, but in early sobriety, it was one place I could go where I wasn't expected to drink. Yeah, I was on that fence for a long time too. You might be there forever. You might flip one way, you might flip another. Who knows? More will be revealed, right? I was on that fence for a long time too. And before I ever started speaking about leaving AA on the internet or breaking my anonymity for the first time ever, because I never posted like I never said on the internet that I was in AA until I left. And so I got over that fence before I ever felt comfortable dissenting into the place of like, no, AA is harmful, a harmful ideology. There are plenty other plenty of other non-harmful recovery paths, most of which have higher stats as far as success rates. And I don't think that I would never recommend anybody going. And I'm not saying my perspective is correct. Obviously, that's my perspective, but I do have a lot of empathy for that fence. I was conflicted for a very long time because, yeah, I had a place to go in early sobriety too. Um, I see it differently. I see it differently now. And I don't know, some people might flip the other way on the fence and say no, AA is a vibe and might want to go back themselves. There's no right or wrong. It's all about choice, whatever we want to choose. Kate says you end up uh, indoctrinating yourself and yourself. The authentic one disappears and your mental health is not treated and becomes damaging. Yep, that's my experience. Kate says. JBC says, nothing made me feel like I needed a drink, quite like sitting through an AA meeting. A lot of people say that. I've heard that from a lot of people. Steven says, I'm glad for the decent people and for the help, but Smart Recovery helped me see beyond the religious stuff and into cause and effect for my problems. I love how Smart Recovery, I did their facilitator training so I could learn more about their program. And I love how all the science-backed, evidence-based practices they teach people for coping skills. That's to me, that's really what recovery is about. It's like learning how to actually not drink. AA is like learning how to be religious. And there's nothing wrong with being religious. It's just not a recovery solution. It's just be clear, it's a fucking religion. And so I love SMART because it teaches you how to actually like, you know, learn how to work with your nervous system. Pamela says there's no such thing as an alcoholic. I never received a medical test. That's nonsense. 100% agree with that perspective. Downtown Tasty says, agree about the repetition thing. It's why I believe in nipping things in the bud. Keep something around long enough and it legitimizes it. Look at anti-vax, sovereign citizens, etc. They deny reality. Yeah, the more we repeat something, the more it goes into our brain. It's just how it works. Green Mountain Mama, I was trying so hard in AA to seem positive and grateful that I completely disconnected from my feelings and body. I ignored chest pain for weeks and almost died of a heart attack. Wow. I'm sorry to hear it. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're alive. I'm glad you got the help that you needed if you did, and that you're doing better if you are. And yeah, I feel like that speaks to the spiritual bypassing where there's only certain parts of us are allowed to be approved in AA, like feeling grateful for God, for our life, for the program, all of that. Can't be angry, resentful, anything else. Everything is our disease talking. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. Downtown Tasty says, yeah, they're so callous about people dying. It's so brutal. They act like they care. They can act like they care, but if you relapse and die, they'll be talking about you just like that. Well, they had to die so we could live. So gross. Yeah, it is disgusting. It should be illegal. It's effed up. Green Mountain Mama says, no one has to die and you don't have to hit rock bottom to change your substance use. Maybe get sucked into a cult though. Yeah. We just have to be ready to change our lives. You know, we have to be at a point where we've either had enough is enough, right? I mean, the way that we change typically is that we've had enough pain or we want something more because we move away from pain, we move towards pleasure, but we do more to move away from pain than towards pleasure, according to like the research about human motivation and human like how we change. So we have to be done, but we can be done at any time that we decide we're done. There doesn't have to be some crazy rock bottom. We can just decide we want something more for ourselves. So I think it's so weird when people say to me, like, you're going to get drunk. Give it a couple of years. You're going to get drunk. I'm like, bro, it's been almost 6 years since I left AA. I left AA in 2020. I didn't get drunk. And people choose to drink and drink fine. It's not even about having to be abstinent. But for me, it's about I'm choosing sobriety because of the benefits of it. I love that I'm more emotionally stable now than I ever been in my life. All of my anxiety disorders are gone. When I was drinking, I had like every anxiety disorder. I was a hot fucking mess. Like in my brain, I associate, whether it's true or not, being sober with having good mental health and being emotionally stable. And Yeah, and that is a powerful motivator for me. It's not worth it. Drinking isn't worth it for me because of how I associate it in my brain. It has nothing to do with a spiritual malady. It has nothing to do with anything AA said it was, or a lack of God, or anything like that, or a disease doing push-ups. I've literally decided in my mind, and we can all decide at any time, that something is painful or something is pleasurable, and that's how human behavior is motivated. I've decided that it's more pleasurable to not drink. I may change my mind, but that's it's just it's kind of basic stuff. Let's see. Mag says, one thing I heard is nothing is wasted in God's economy. Tragic in the context of all lost. Yeah. Uh, According to Amelia says, so glad to catch a live. I'm leaving AA after 1 year. It's really hard. Yeah. That's why I call it escaping AA. I think it's an accurate way to talk about it because for a lot of us, is very difficult. I had a lot of exit trauma. I didn't know what that was at the time. I had all the emotions. I was in shock. We did a video about the shock of leaving AA. Then I did a whole series on grieving AA because then, we go through the phases of grieving, the phases of grief, like anger, denial, bargaining, all of that through that model. Of course, that model is not a fact. No model is a fact. AA is not a fact. Yeah. I'm learning a lot here and from Quackaholics. Yeah, love Quackaholics Anonymous. He's a vibe for sure. And we have Michael loves being sober. Yeah. Mag says, I'm ready for the rebuilding phase. Are you doing this here or on a different platform? Um, yes, I'm still doing predominantly deconstruction content right now. I have been planning to shift that for a while to reconstruction stuff, but I feel like there's more I want to do. Um, I'm not quite done yet. I might start mixing it in. We'll see how we go. Let's see. The Muppets, I left AA in September. My depression lowered. I'm getting in better physical shape and quit cigarettes. Still waiting for the disease in the parking lot to get me. Yeah, there's no disease, right? Um, Downtown Tasty says AA doesn't address the core issues of addiction 100%. It actively makes them worse, in my opinion. My self esteem was in the gutter, made worse by AA, totally. And I had to work on it to get it better, totally. A lot of people say this. This is also my experience. Um, According to Amelia, thanks, Kirsten, and everyone here. This channel is saving my butt. Escaping is the right word for sure. Yeah, totally. Okay, one more and then I'll go to the next one here on my list. Downtown Tasty says, I actually went against almost all of their teachings in order to get better. Most of their teachings, to be honest, were just control for the sake of control. Yeah, it's really bananas when you unpack it all, isn't it? Okay, the next one, number 3 on how sharing the message, not the mess, is harmful. And the way that I'm going to wrap up this live stream as well is to how to use this principle, like what we're unpacking here, for your good. So we will shift into reconstruction. Who is that? Was that Amelia? No, not Amelia. Somebody was asking about reconstruction here. Maybe that was Mags. So at the end, we are going to move it, position it into what we've learned about this and how that can look in reconstruction going forward. So stick around for the end or come back and watch the replay or do whatever you choose to do. Number 3, and how sharing the message, not the mess, is harmful, in my opinion. It disconnects us from our inner authority. We learn to ask things like, was that a good share? Did I impact anybody? Instead of, is this true for me? So it shifts us off of our authenticity and onto like a performance kind of a vibe. It gives like an external approval is replacing self-trust. So instead of feeling good about ourselves or feeling like we're expressing ourselves, we're wondering what other people think about us. Now, not everyone's going to be doing this. This is just a general thing, and we're individuals. We are not general things. So bear with me as I try to paint this picture here. Over time, we can stop checking in with ourselves at all. And I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of meetings that I went to especially in Bali, where the majority, I'd say 85% maybe of the fellowship in Bali is people under 1 year sober. People go to rehab and get sober and stay on the island for like a year and then bail. So when I was there, like, and when I moved to the beach town there, I moved to Bali when I was 4.5 years sober, but I moved to the beach town when I was what, like 6 years sober, maybe? So at 6 years sober, I was like in that circle, I was kind of like an old timer because everybody was like 2 months sober or like 3 months sober or whatever. So when I was going to the meetings to share, I wasn't going to express myself. I was going to be of service to the newcomers. So I'm going there to put on this role of being the AA member who shares the message, right? Like that's what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm doing that because it's helping people and all the reasons that we believe that that's how we're supposed to spend our time. Yeah. Let's see. So they're not getting to know me when I do that, right? So when we do that, we're not getting known, we're not connecting, we're in our minds, we're helping. Um, so we're the one who knows, not the one who connects in that context. So yeah, I guess like thinking about it like that, it could be kind of lonely because you're just there to be used for help versus known and connected with for friendship or something. I don't know. It creates these kind of weird dynamics when you have the hierarchy like that. Okay, so we have Ben says, I have been sober 15 years and 10 of them were with AA, a toxic cult. Yeah. Definitely a toxic cult. Kate says there were so many reasons for addiction, and in my opinion, only a therapist can get to the root if one wants to do it. Definitely not 12 steps. They say it's spiritual malady for everyone. Ridiculous. 100%. The biggest unlock for me in my life wasn't even getting sober, it was understanding autism. I was like, oh, my whole life I've been made to feel, like, including by AA, that how I perceive, think, feel, sense, all of the things about my neurology are wrong and should be fixed, changed, altered, prayed away, whatever. But no, I'm just like kind of fucking different and always have been. And that's fine. And just to rock out with my bad self as I am, instead of try to conform into a system that wants me to parrot an ideology, I can just be myself. And whoever doesn't like me can scroll along and like I can just be me. I couldn't be myself inside Alcoholics Anonymous because I didn't even know who I was because I was trying to conform to this idea of what a real alcoholic is. And it doesn't freaking exist because alcohol use disorder or substance use disorder or addiction is totally different. The habit of using a substance that changes how we feel, that we get addicted to and become compulsive with, has nothing to do with all this other stuff that is under the word alcoholic. Under the word alcoholic in AA, it means all these things about us. We're restless, irritable, discontented. We have 1,000 forms of fear. Resentments are bad. Like there's all this stuff where people believe they were born an alcoholic, even though they didn't drink until they were in their 20s. They were always an alcoholic. It's like that whole mindset or frame is just completely wrong. And if you're in that, I don't know how you ever get to self acceptance and self compassion because you're in a frame that is inherently shaming you and that you can never fix yourself because there's nothing to fucking fix. There may be trauma to resolve, fair enough. There may be coping skills to learn for your nervous system. There may be things to explore with, through reading books or with mental health professionals to understand about yourself. But the idea that we're broken and need to be fixed or we're diseased or defected is just the wrong model and it's inherently shameful. Okay, I digress. Let's look at a few more comments. Downtown Tasty says, glad someone brought up cigarettes because one lie I hear is you can't drink if you're a heroin addict because all substances hit the same brain. So people who smoke are addicted to everything by that logic. Yeah, 100%. That's, I really like Burn the Stigma as an example of that, who no longer does heroin but smokes pot and has no problem with it. Yeah, people. Let's see, another one, Downtown Tasty. Nowadays, I drink socially here and there after quitting heroin. Glad I can moderate and I don't need to be afraid to live like a normal human. Yeah. the whole idea that that abstinence is the correct path is AA global indoctrination. Now, some people might want to stay abstinent. I wish I had gone like, not wish, but if I could go back, I would have preferred that I would have like, in hindsight, with the wisdom I know now, what I know today in 2026, I would have told myself to go do Sinclair method to harm reduce, change my brain neurologically with the pill naltrexone, and go that route to unlearn addiction in my brain, and then be able to choose to drink if I want in a more moderated way and be less naturally desiring alcohol because my brain has changed through pairing alcohol with the pill naltrexone via the Sinclair method route. That just makes much more logical sense to me than this idea that you have to be abstinent or whatever. Plus, having to be abstinent is such a big ask that I think a lot of us drink or harm ourselves a lot longer with substances than necessary because we think abstinence is the only door and we don't want to walk through it. And nobody wants to walk into a cult religion, period. So, I think harm reduction is the easier, softer way. It should be the number one promoted way in my mind. Anything that's harm reduction, um, and not a and or not even just harm reduction, just not abstinence. Like, let's have a buffet and you figure out what works for you. Muppet says, "AA members kept feeding me cigarettes when I was a minor, and I think that might have been illegal." Yeah. Not the best influences, huh? From Recovery to Discovery says, "This, I don't believe AA ideology truly allows people to be the most authentically expressed versions of themselves." Yeah. Downtown Tasty says, "Sorry for all the comments, by the way. Lol, I'm ADHD also. And if something comes to mind, I feel like I got to get it out there." Yeah, get it out. Be yourself. Do your thing. The only thing that I would consider a rule for my live streams are if people, actually, I think you were on live when this happened. If I see commenters attacking other commenters, there's a button I can press that's called time out, and that knocks them from the live stream. And so if people are taking digs at each other in the comments, boom, we're out. We're not fighting with each other here. Period. That's the only rule. You can comment all you like. You can be AD. You can be whoever you are. Sometimes Steven says sometimes it really seems that labeling sometimes something. Let me slow down. Sometimes it really seems that labeling something an addiction makes it an addiction. That's how AA spins it into denial. They sure hate it when you refuse to call yourself what they think of you. 100%. I get a lot of AA commenters saying to me, my Facebook is like crazy these days. I apologize if you have been on my Facebook and you've been exposed to the dumpster fire of AA members in my comments. It is really something else. I mean, I think I should do like a whole psychological study about like what the fuck is happening right now the past 1 month. I don't know what Zuckerberg changed in the algorithm, but this past month has been bananas. What a lot of them call me is they say, "You're obsessed with deprogramming," and they try to position that I'm obsessed and that's a bad thing and blah, blah, blah. And we know that in AA ideology, we have a so-called obsession of the mind, one of Dr. Silkworth's ideas. And yes, for sure, there was a time when it did feel like I was obsessed with alcohol. I don't think of the word obsessed as a bad word. I know that my neurology is I've been assessed as autistic and ADHD. So I have monotropic thinking. I really identify with that core feature of autism where I have monotropic thinking. In ADHD, it's called hyperfocus or it's called special interest. There's different names for it, but basically I can lock onto one thing for a long period of time. Transitions are difficult for me. Starting things, ending things, they're a little bit harder for my brain. I get locked into like a one-track mind kind of a thing. It's not a bad thing. People can shame me for having the mind that I have, but I realize that's a them problem, not a me problem. But inside AA ideology, that would have been something that would have been positioned as a defect of character that needed to be prayed away. In fact, my sponsor did position that as a defect of character that needed to be prayed away. So all in all, I really feel like the way that AA positions us is very toxic and very demoralizing because a lot of what we're being made to feel that we need to inventory or pray away is just actually traits that we can actually rock in and are great, and there's nothing wrong with us, you know? There's nothing fucking wrong with us. Mag said, "Would love you to do a collab with Knitting Cult Lady." You know what? This just came up on our Zoom this week on our book club. So right now, our book club book of the month is The Sober Truth. Knitting Cult Lady had a book that came out this week, 2 days ago, called The Culting of America, and that might be our book next month. And so I thought it would be cool to, yeah, to reach out to her and see if she wanted to do either a podcast or even like a live stream. I want to read her book first. I read her other book. Her first book was called Uncultured, about her life growing up in the Children of God, and then going into, which is a cult, and then going into the military, the army, which she views as a cult. And she also views Alcoholics Anonymous as a cult. I actually find a lot of her thinking around AA to be um, pretty advanced, because most cult scholars and cult experts don't see AA as a cult, and I love that she does and how she views it. Now, she obviously wasn't in AA herself, so I think there are some nuances that we might know that she doesn't, because she wasn't in it, just like I wouldn't know things about Child of God. But yeah, I think it would be fun to do a with her of some sorts, read her book and talk to her about it, and talk to her about AA. See how she can uh, maybe help y'all deconstruct a little bit more from her perspective. I think that would be totally a vibe. Pamela says, "I never wanted to be abstinent. AA led me to drug addiction, but now now I am kratom sober, and my kids have no problem with that at all." Awesome. Yeah, we get to decide what our life is about. I mean, uh, and some mags and some of the OGs like Holly Witt. Yeah. You know, I read Holly's book. I got sober before her. So there's a lot of these programs for sobriety that came out. Like, her book is called Quit Like a Woman. I think that's who you're talking about. Um, and also like Annie Grace's book, which is called This Naked Mind. I really liked her book as well. Actually, I found Holly's book a little bit difficult to read because it just felt very angry with and political, and I have a hard time with that, but that's just me personally. But she did talk a lot about AA is harmful, and patriarchy and all this kind of stuff. But both of those women got sober after me. So there's a lot of recovery paths have developed since I got sober in 2009. I love that. And there's lots of results for these people. They get people really good results. Savage Minnow says, "What's up, Savage Minnow? Oh, tell them to come talk to me. I'll give them a link and have them on to chat, as long as they are civil and personal." I think this is about some of the AA trolls, maybe. Let's see. Downtown Tasty says, "Oh, Kirsten, speaking of your Facebook comments, I sent you a video I found where it's an AA haunted house. Saw it and had to send it to you. Did you send it to me on Facebook? Maybe I don't know what your name is, so I don't know if I've seen it." Downtown Tasty. Or maybe, you know what? I actually have a lot of messages in Facebook on my, like, there's like a hidden folder that I have to like click specially to go into those messages. A lot of them are like very intense hate messages from AA spiritual members, right? I need to go look through those again, because every once I find some messages in there from people who are not like there to tell me I'm like the devil. So I'll look for that. What was it? It was a video. I'm going to write that down actually, so I make a point of looking for that. AA, maybe I did see it. I'm having kind of like I'm not sure if I saw this moment. AA haunted house. Facebook message. Okay. Moving on. Kate says, "I'm getting assessed for ADHD next month. It would make so much sense for me." Yeah, it was the biggest unlock for me to understand. And this is the thing, like when I think about like in hindsight back on AA, I'm like, bro, I think most of us are ADHD in there. Looking at the stats just from like what they were saying and now what I understand as ADHD versus alcoholism. And I'm like, okay. So I was relating to this guy. He was literally talking about like ADHD brain. And I related so much and identified, because they're talking about like neurology, what I know now is more neurology that can't be inventoried, prayed away, all of that stuff. That's more to be understood and optimized. And I've gotten more from like mastering, optimizing my nutrition than I ever got from the steps. I had brain inflammation. I had like detoxifying myself really helped me. Eating like healthy foods really helped me, nourishing foods, getting supplements on lock and specific supplements, like learning specific things about what's going to make my neurons better, healthier, happier, regrow. So that was those things have been a lot more helpful for me. That's why I think it's so harmful to be locked into a system where you think that that's your only problem, but it's not even a real problem. Alcoholism, alcohol addiction's a problem, right? But this alcoholism that we need to pray away, it's like you get trapped in there. Um, yes, knitting cult lady is great. Yes, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, there was a book Knitting Cult Lady was reading called The 12-Step Horror Stories. Yeah, I remember when she was reading that, and I took a hard pass on that book because I was like, "Been there, done that, I'm fucking good. I live that shit." Like, I can recall from my own memory, I don't need to, like, read about it. I am good. That's how I felt about that. I don't know, maybe one day I'll read it, but I was like, "Yeah, I get it." Lived it, been there, done that. Um, have you watched videos from Kevin Cox on YouTube? He was posting about the dangers of it 8 years ago. Okay, so let me write that down. Kevin Cox YouTube. No, I haven't. AA dangerous. I love all these. Kate says passing the basket and then posted $5.99 European. Thanks, Kate. Passing the basket. They're like, AA is free. And I'm like, and when people say AA is free, I don't even talk about the passing the basket thing, which is obviously we're putting money in the basket, right? In the AA meeting. I'm like, no, it's free labor exploitation. It's not actually free. I mean, I was getting 1 hour with my sponsor a week, but I was sponsoring 3 women, so I'm sponsoring more people. I'm giving away more time than I'm getting. It's not free. It's free labor exploitation. We're told we have a forever disease that wants to kill us, and the only way to survive this made-up disease is to forever free label, like exploit ourselves through free labor for the system. So AA is free labor exploitation. That's why it's free, is because we don't get paid for the labor we're expected to do there, as per most cults. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll along. There's a lot of comments here. This is cool. Sounds like a pyramid scheme. Yeah, well, what makes it sound like a pyramid scheme is when you realize it's a like a MLM book selling business. Yeah. Downtown Tasty says the passing the basket definitely has peer pressure to donate, lol. But yes, many cults exploit free labor. Some even have you build houses or buildings they use to, and sell money for the cult. Yeah, my friend in AA, his sponsor had all the sponsees, including him. This was when he was in LA AA. Go to his house every week and like do construction work, clean his sponsor. He had to clean his sponsor's motorcycle every week. He had to do construction work, build things. So they were exploited through actual like hard labor in like at his house. Okay. Savage says very much like a pyramid scheme. Let's continue on to the next one, which is number 4. Point number 4. Okay. Point number 4 on how sharing the message, not the mess, can be harmful. It can create emotional stagnation. Real growth requires naming what's actually happening right now. AA sharing freezes you in a fixed identity. I used to be like this. This is what the book says. This is what happened. New insights, doubts, anger, and grief are quietly suppressed often. We might stay sober, but we stop evolving. Yes, of course, we still evolved in AA. I would say we were all learning lessons, right? So we were moving forward, but it's like having the foot on the brake and the gas, or what if from recovery to discovery, John is still here, what he calls the glass ceiling society, where there's a limit on our growth because we're conforming, we're in an ideology. I didn't know I was possessed by the ideology, just like the fish doesn't know that it's in water. When you're seeing the world through your limited perspective, you don't realize that. That's why one of the comments I tend to say on Facebook to these AA trolls that are coming out of the woodworks is, perspectives exist outside your own. I'm like, bro, like this mentality, it's that AAs have that their perspective is the only one, which I get because, but for the grace of God, there go I, that was me, I did that. But it's like the 3-year-old who goes like this and believes mommy's no longer in the room because they can't see him. It's like, that's why I say, like, if you're religious, I respect that. That's fine. It has nothing to do with me, what you think, what you believe. If you believe AA works, that's fine. Good luck. When someone tells me AA saved my life, I write back every time every time pretty much. Maybe I've missed it once or twice. I write, I'm glad you're alive. That's like literally how I feel. If you think something saved you, I'm glad you're saved. I'm glad you're alive. This is good news. Life is good news. Because we all know people who got cut off early from life, right? So if you're still alive, I'm fucking happy for you, regardless of what you think it is. It doesn't matter that I think it's bullshit that an institution can't save your life. I don't think AA saves lives, but that has nothing to do. Because someone else can believe that, and I respect that. And I would never tell them that I don't believe AA saves lives, which is true for me. I would just say AA doesn't save my life, right? Because autonomy, agency, we get to think what we want to think. But there's this thing about people in AA where it's like they're pressuring us to I don't know. It's kind of like this, like, I need to coerce you into my worldview because of my cognitive dissonance or because of the system and how I see the world. Therefore, not only am I going to see you through my lens, but I got to kind of like pressure you to fit into my worldview. But a lot of us don't fit into that worldview anymore. So it's like impossible. Okay. Ben says, I remember an old timer 40 years sober had a meltdown because a neighbor gave him some wine for Christmas, unknowing he was in AA. Yeah, I don't see how that's a problem. Just give it to somebody else. Get rid of it. Toss it. Throw it away. Okay. Number 5, this AA doctrine of share the message, not the mess, can train self-censorship. So we learn what is allowed and what isn't, don't we? By culture, not necessarily by explicitly being told. Anything that challenges AA's worldview gets edited out. I heard somebody, when I was a newcomer, talk about a baseball game in a meeting, and this other lady jumped up and said, outside issues, no outside issues. And I was like, we can't talk about baseball? What? What's happening here? Okay. This is a classic cult control mechanism. When our speech is regulated, our thoughts follow. So our thoughts can become regulated. According to Amelia says, my final straw was a service meeting this weekend where I saw the supreme leader of the group for the first time. Curtain lifted, Oz exposed. Yes, it is like Oz, right? Once you see behind the curtain, the jig is up. You see it. You can't go back to like believing that Santa came down the chimney. Like, it's over. It's over. Okay, number 6. And this is the last one here before we go more into the Reconstruction vibes. This whole share the message, not the mess. It keeps the system alive, not us. Sharing the message serves group cohesion, obviously recruitment, and indoctrination. I think this is what people get confused on, like who are still in AA. It's the indoctrination is you sharing in the meeting, Frank, when you tell us that you did this and you did that and you got this and you got that, and you're proselytizing, you're evangelizing. It's recruiting in the meeting. It's like, this works. And so, yeah, it keeps the system alive. It also preserves the ideology because it just keeps getting repeated. It does not serve our individuality, our complexity, or our growth. And over time, people can feel stuck, flat, disconnected, afraid to think freely, or even not knowing that we're not thinking freely. it's hard to see that we're trapped when we're inside of it because there's also this, and let me know if you experienced this or saw this. There's this vibe that we're the chosen ones. Our lives were saved, that we're doing it right. The us versus them cult mentality, where we're the ones who know the best. We got the only path that works. We got the one true recovery path up in here, and we are better, we are morally, spiritually, whatever, recovery superior to those outside of the group. So we don't even bother looking at outside literature. We're told it's not relevant, it's dangerous, it's bullshit, we're the best, we're superior, all the other stuff is crap. So we don't even like understand that there's all these other paths and what they are. And now not everybody was a true believer. Some of y'all were reading all the literature, all the outside literature while you were in AA. But I was a true believer, which for me was like I stuck with the big book, and I didn't read about other recovery paths or addiction, modern addiction science, because I thought I thought I had a solution. According to Amelia, it says, "Yep, I was part of a big group out of New York, and it was rare that the big leaders would attend the business meetings, which is why I didn't meet them until recently." Kate says, "Not thinking freely coupled with spiritual bypassing, a recipe for mental decline or becoming stagnant in our growth." Yep, this is like the mic drop moment right here, Kate. 100%. Spiritually bypassing and not thinking freely. This is part of how the ideology is super freaking harmful. And by seeing where it's harmful, we can also see where our growth opportunities lie. Becoming a better critical thinker, working on our these are skills, right? Trusting ourselves is a skill. Critical thinking is a skill. Making decisions for ourselves is a skill. And the more we practice these things, the more our brains change and they become easier for us. Yes, we'll get things wrong, but then we learn, and it's about iterating and practicing these things, practicing thinking for ourselves, understanding other people's ideas and what makes sense for us. I like to think of it all as like building skills because it's literally changing our brain. We know that repeating and parroting the ideology changes our brain and we start to believe it, but also practicing other things shapes our brain in the new way. So if we start practicing who we want to become or expanding our understanding of the world, addiction, whatever, yeah. Okay, so then exiting. Let's move over to exiting AA ideology and this whole message, not the mess doctrine, and telling a new story, telling yourself a new message, let's call it. We move from the doctrine to our lived truth, to what modern science says, to yeah, to whatever interests us, really. Um, so we can change the meaning that we're putting on things. Things will happen in our life, right? So like something might happen in our life that we might perceive as bad or whatever. And then right away what our brains like to do is like add a meaning to it. So we can even look at this as like, to make it concrete, like realizing AA is a harmful group, harmful ideology, or something that we want in our, like, removed from our heads that we want to deprogram from. And then we get to choose a story, like we get to make a meaning around it. We can think of it as a toxic environment that we wish we never went to. That's a valid story, and that story may change, and story may stay. The way that I like to make meaning in my own life is I do like to try to find the positive lift off of it because I know that stories shape our lives and that we start to believe the narratives that our minds spin, right? So the way that I look at it is I am grateful genuinely. I know that's a triggering word after leaving AA. I really love where I'm at right now with the curiosities that I have in my mind, the learning, like thirst for learning that I have, and I wouldn't have this understanding of the world, which I really value. Meaning, I understand ideologies, I understand ideological possession, I understand being in a cult and leaving a cult, and worldviews and how they could trap us, and how not to be limited by a worldview, how to engage with other people who are stuck in worldviews or ideologies. Like, all that I'm learning through deprogramming AA, I wouldn't have had this embodied, visceral, deep learning. Maybe I could have learned it from a book, but it's very different when you actually experience it, right? You get such a deeper, like, embodied experience of it. So I love where I'm at now in my evolution, and I wouldn't have this had I not gone through AA. So I choose to look at AA as something that I'm glad's in the past, but that I take so many lessons from. So it wasn't for waste. And yeah, so that's the meaning that I make about it. We can make up whatever meaning we want. And when we make up meaning by something that's happened to us, I'm not encouraging any meaning to be made. I'm just saying that when we make up meanings, like when I made up a meaning in AA, or when it was handed to me, that the way that my brain works is alcoholism and a character defect and all of that, then because that was the meaning that was put on how I naturally am, which is false, but that was the meaning that was placed on me, then I'm doing all these actions like nightly inventories, praying away my so-called defects and all this stuff. But so leaving AA, the meaning I put now on it is like, oh, this is how my brain is. So understand it, optimize it, rock with it, go all in on your strengths, like forgive yourself for your so-called weaknesses, and create a world where you can thrive in based upon how you actually are. So my meaning has changed. I still don't like hold a label over myself like I held alcoholic over myself. I don't hold ADHD over myself, but it makes a lot of sense. I can forgive myself for like having papers stacked everywhere, or the way that I happen to not be as organized as some other people might be, or whatever. I have skills and I have rooms for growth or whatever. And so, yeah, the meaning that we put on things is super helpful. And I love that we get to choose that ourselves, and we can create a new story. The story that we're an alcoholic, fatal progressive disease, spiritual malady, physical allergy, need a daily reprieve, need Bill's religion, all of that, that's a story. And I no longer believe that any of that's true. And I get to create a new story for myself. And isn't it cool that we understand that these stories can completely dominate our lives, like the way that the AA story dominated my life? And we can use our wisdom and understanding that, Reconstruction vibes, and creating a vision for ourselves, casting a future for ourselves, deciding what story we want to step into and who we want to become, and use all that we've understand from having been brainwashed to condition ourselves into the next version of ourselves. To me, that is incredibly powerful, like empowering. I love that. Um, yeah. So it becomes about self authorship. Bill doesn't get to tell our story anymore. Bill Wilson. We get to tell our own story. Yeah. I find that super liberating and super powerful. Let's see some comments over here. According to Amelia says, yes, that's awesome. Nothing wasted. That's how I choose to perceive it. And we get to choose. Now, I also don't think that it's helpful to choose to add a meaning to our life or perceive our past in a positive light when we're still having a feeling about it or feeling a type of way about it, because there is a grieving period that I don't want to spiritually bypass. I want to feel my feelings. And now where I'm at now, especially I left AA in 2020. It's like been a hot minute. Where I am now, I love where I'm at now, and I wouldn't be here had I not been through that stuff. If I could go back, I never would have got addicted to alcohol in the first place. If I could really choose like how it would go, I would do Sinclair method way back earlier in my early 20s before I ever really had a problem. Before, when I knew I had a problem before it got really bad. But because I'm here now, uh, like regretting the past is like hoping it could be different, and that's impossible. So I really love the idea of grieving my losses and then reframing my story and then casting the vision for where I want to go. I don't know what you should do. I'm just sharing the vibes that I feel. Plus, you probably know, or maybe you don't, but I went to coaching school, like, to learn how to be a coach in 2012. It was like a year-long I did a 2-year-long program with that coaching training institute, called the Coaches Training Institute. So I went all in on learning how transformation works, and then I made it my business, and I started coaching people in 2012. And so I've seen a lot of people move through their fear, create new stories for themselves, stop telling lies, stop telling stories that are disempowering in their heads. And I've just seen people really rebuild their lives and come alive. And we can do that at any time. Doesn't need to be a bottom. We can choose to tell a new story about ourselves. And it starts to shape the stories we tell about ourselves shape our lives. We don't need to live Bill's story anymore. Mag says, my biggest deprogram was I make it happen in my life. I don't wait for a sign from the sky. I follow my passion, start a business, etc. Yeah. Cassandra says, I'm moving past worrying about the meetings and more into what's next. Yeah. I love that. Ben saying, I read the Smart Recovery book last year. Excellent recovery book. So practical. Amelia says, this is also helpful. Thanks. Yeah, we gotta cast that vision for ourselves. We know brainwashing works. So let's condition our own minds in the direction we want to go. Literally start telling a new story. I believed because of AA ideology. I believed I had a fatal progressive disease for like a decade, right? So it's kind of humbling to realize you've been conned, living a lie. But then also it's very empowering to realize that like when you tell yourself something enough, or when somebody else tells you something enough, it becomes your reality. It's like, okay, so what do I want my new reality to be? Why don't I start telling myself that over and over and over again until it becomes my reality? Not that just telling yourself a new story changes your life. We obviously have to take action too. And it's not that simple, but you know, might as well use the tools. Savage Minnow says, I don't personally believe Bill was a bad guy. I think he found something that worked for him. And then he and others ignored the harm, which is kind of human. I try to do better, but he did his best, in my opinion. My opinion about Bill really changed when I dug into the history, the origin, the first 4 or 5 years of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I realized just how much he blatantly lied. It was never a viable path. It was a con job. So that's how I perceive him now. I was like, yes, I think he meant maybe he meant well, but I also feel like it was a con job. It was literally he lied about the success. He literally lied. So I don't feel good about somebody who sold me a lie. Yeah. My opinion of Bill has changed a lot over the years. Y'all know probably that if you've been around here a hot minute, there was a time when I was at Bill's grave crying, thanking him for my life and channeling the book from God and all that. And now I'm like, no, he took the steps from the Oxford group. It was all religious conversion the whole time. And maybe my opinion of Bill will change. It does change over the years. My current opinion of Bill, and everybody gets to have their opinion of Bill, right? But my current opinion is it's a con job, and he knew it. He conned us. And maybe he deluded himself into thinking that he had a good thing going, but he was literally spent the 1940s for like a decade depressed in bed, unable to get out of bed because he was depressed. I have a lot of empathy for that. That sounds horrific. But at the same time, he was unable to get out of bed depressed. He was writing the 12 and 12, which talks about being happy. He has a manual for being happy and joyous and free and all of these things. It's a con job. He wasn't even living his own results. So I kind of am like, but it didn't even work for you. Like, you weren't these things. You weren't living the promises you promised us in your sales letter about the 9-step promises. You weren't living those. Surely you made your amends, right, Bill? So why weren't you living the promises that you promised us? I would think that like you want to sell something because it worked for you and then it hopefully it works for other people and then you sell it to broader people. But it wasn't even working for him. I mean, I believe he didn't drink again. I have no reason to believe Bill did drink, but he wasn't living the promises. And I'm like, what? You weren't happy, joyous, or free. If you were free, why were you doing all the 13th step? And why did you die of your cigarette addiction, emphysema, right? Like, what? Okay, I'm on a tirade here. I'll calm down. Let's see. Oh, Savage Minnow was saying, oh, wow, that's really messed up. Yeah, it's interesting when we look into Bill because there's the difference between the rumors and the truth, right? Like there's some stuff I just feel like is fact. It was a fact that Bill was depressed and could barely get out of bed for a long period of time in the 1940s. Marty Mann's trying to grab him out of bed and he couldn't get out of bed. That's a fact. Now, whether Bill begged for alcohol on his deathbed or not, I don't know. That could be a rumor. I wasn't there. I don't know. I could see that he would. I could also see that someone can make that up to make him sound like an idiot or like his program was a scam or something. So I don't know. That to me is like a rumor. Some things are like facts and some things are like maybe not true. So I try to kind of hold it all with like, I don't know. I try to like let go of assumptions and like really look at the facts and be like, wait, what actually happened here? And there's enough facts that I'm like, okay, this isn't right, that I don't need to take any assumptions on to like add to it. So I try to clear myself of assumptions. I'm not perfect at that, obviously. Let's see. Rick, what's up, Rick? Good morning, good afternoon. After 37 years in AA, I think it would have been interesting to have avoided AA entirely. Yeah. I think the longer I remained in AA, the more uptight I got. AA was mostly a waste of time. 100% it was mostly a waste of time. Lauren, can you say more about his lies? Because I don't really know anything about that. Yes. There's actually, hold please while I go here. If you have any AA Bill lies, feel free to write them in the comments while I am looking up a quick video. I want to post a video there for you. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going to get a playlist because there's a playlist that will really go into that for you. Okay, this is a video that I think is really good. It's called Why Does AA Lie About Its Origins? And it's a 6-part series called Cult Religion Part 1 of 6. So I'm going to post that right here in the comments. I think that went through. So that's a great way to know how that 6-part series will help you go through it. I also want to, I'll read a little bit just briefly from Writing the Big Book. This was written by an AA, I believe he's like an AA true believer. He's still an AA member. His name is William Schaberg. He had access because he is an AA lover to the AA resources. He went through all the paperwork, all the documents, all of the things, all of the history. If you are an AA lover, they will let you into the AA history, is kind of my understanding. So he wrote about, I have a little marker on here, Bill sold a myth. Okay, so here are some things that he says in here. He's calling it myths, lies. What do you want to call it? How is it a myth and not a lie? It's kind of like the same word, just trying to downplay it. So this part of the book, it's actually the very beginning, page 2. Bill Wilson, a consummate storyteller. He was by far the worst offender when it came to accuracy regarding the early history of AA. Worst offender of accuracy. In other words, he lied. But he doesn't really say lie. It's interesting. Wilson's divergence from the truth was so common and so pervasive that it can only be compared to a dark cloud looming over any attempt to write an accurate history of AA's early years, obscuring, even falsifying what happened at several key points in the story. It can be explained as willful, conscious myth-making, the creation of stories specifically crafted to deliver a particularly clear image or an unmistakable lesson to the listener. But his parables They are fashioned to instill some hope in the still suffering alcoholic or to provide an instructive, uncluttered story about the celebrated origins of Alcoholics Anonymous. Historically, truth with a capital T was not the point. For Bill, that point was that the story had to convey an important message, be dramatically delivered for maximum impact. Wilson believed this kind of falsification was more than justified as long as it served his higher purpose, which was selling books, right? Part of it. If Bill wasn't concerned about selling books, and there is nothing with being an author selling books. If Bill wasn't worried about selling books, then why is he the only one who gets royalties for the big book when it was really all of them who wrote the big book? There's more. If you want to learn more about the scandal of the rights to the big book, go to the Orange Papers and read about it because there's a scandal there. So yeah, here he's calling him a conscious and deliberate myth maker. Finally, many aspects of the true stories just did not make for comfortable retelling once Alcoholics Anonymous became a successful national institution. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Willful myth-making, omission of uncomfortable facts. Omission of uncomfortable facts. Had he not done so, had he not lied, had he not done so, it is possible he would never have been so successful in transforming his profound vision of widespread recovery into such a vibrant, spiritually enriching international reality. So this guy has the rose-colored glasses on still. Yeah, Bill would not have been so successful if he didn't lie about it all, 100%. But why is that a good thing? There's more too, but that's just to give you an idea. And that's what an AA member says about Bill. So my opinion is that like he knew, yeah, he probably wanted to help people. He probably wanted his business to work. But he knew it wasn't working. He knew it wasn't true. He made up lies to validate that he had a good thing going when he didn't. Savage Minnow, was he trying to fake it till you make it? Because that sounds miserable. Kind of what it sounds like when I read this. And again, I try to stay out of like assumptions. But when I look at the history, it just looks like he knew that it wasn't true and that he was selling a solution that didn't really exist, is what it looks like to me. Let me know what you think. Rick says, the old timers around Bill said his problem was he needed to work his steps. Savage Minnow says, if I beg for drugs on my deathbed and give them to me. Yeah, I feel like they should have given him a drink. If he really begged for a drink on his deathbed, they should have given him a drink. Like, why not? Amelia says, thanks for asking. I wanted to know more too. Yeah, thanks for asking and thank you for posting. Okay. Lauren says, my impression is that he created a good program for narcissistic recovery, but not for people who grew up as scapegoats. Then you put them both in the room together, and that's how abuse happens. I think there's some insight there. Yeah. Kate says, orange papers are amazing, 100%. Savage Minnow says, it's a myth because he wanted to believe it. Yes. I mean, can you imagine today being in the hospital for some disease and some whack-a-noodle on the floor above you is on psychedelics, is on hallucinogens, has a vision on his hallucinogens that he is supposed to help everybody about this disease, and then the doctor gives him permission to go talk to you about his vision from his hallucinogen experience. Bill was on Belladonna, had a white light experience where he saw a chain of one alcoholic helping another, and he convinced the doctor at the hospital that he can go talk to the other patients. Is that even legal? I don't know. But it's so, I mean, the arrogance, like what? He created a religion. I always say from recovery to discovery, I always say that 12-step is narcissistic abuse in group setting. A lot of people say that. I have a, let me get to it now. Y'all know the Deprogram Lounge is free. My community, if you're on YouTube, it is the first link below. I want to give you a link from in there. If you want to do this training, it is free. Okay, so here's the link. If you're not already in the Deprogram Lounge, it'll just ask you to sign up. But this is my training on how AA is like narcissistic abuse. I'll post it here for anybody who's interested. There is also a checklist you can go through to see if that's true for you too, if you want. Okay, Cassandra says myth makers, myth makers make it. Lies. Yeah, it's a very polite way to say lie, the way they're talking about it. Nobody likes to be called a liar, but I mean, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, what the fuck? Kate says he is such a narcissist that he wrote to the wives pretending he was a woman and told his wife that she couldn't write it. It was written in first person. Yep. Nothing. Downtown Tasty says, yeah, nothing says spirituality like lying. I mean, what is this rigorously honest business and this constitutionally incapable of being honest with himself business? What? I mean, the mythology goes so deep, doesn't it? Like when you start to see like what's behind the curtain and then you realize what's said inside the ideology and like what we all believed, it's like, wait, what? He didn't channel the steps from God? He took them from Frank Bookman? Wait, what? Yeah. It turns out the emperor was naked the whole time. Oh my God, Lauren, I screenshotted your comment. That is exactly how I feel. Thanks for putting it like that. Kat says, Kirsten, I think it would be super interesting if you made a video comparing AA system to George Orwell's 1944. AA and 1984. Yeah, I talk about 1984 a lot in context of AA, but I haven't made that video yet. I did make a video on Scientology and AA. It is, okay, then continuing. It is eerie how accurate it resonates and lines up. Okay, Kat. Yeah. I'm writing that down. Video idea. And the thing is though, even if you're more in your Reconstruction area than your deconstruction era, as far as leaving AA, it's still really helpful to, in my opinion, go deep in the deconstruction work, because when we understand 1984 and George Orwell's novel that he wrote, what? He wrote it in 1949? Is that when he wrote it? 1939? No, wait. 84, 48. I think he wrote it in 1948 and called it 84. I think that's what it was. Anyways, so he writes this, he talks about these things in there like double speak, right? Where it's the opposite of what it is. Like when Hitler called Goebbels propaganda minister, he called him the Minister of Public Enlightenment. So when you name things the opposite of what they are, like service work keeps you sober, but that's free labor exploitation. So there's all these ways that people can rename things, and then the name, we can get like conditioned to see it a certain way or perceive it a certain way because of the naming factor. So yeah, understanding 1984 just in general and looking out the world through these deconstructed lenses, to me, is really liberating and empowering, regardless of if you know how much deprogramming you've done for AA, or if you're done deprogramming AA. Just being like a wiser human is the vibe for me. Let's see. Amelia says, that's going to be my new phone wallpaper to get me through the next few weeks. Hopefully you're okay with that, Lil. Oh, the comment, I think. For example, slavery, war is peace, ignorance is strength. Yeah. So I have something. What was it? Let's see if I have it open here. Oh, yeah. So Hitler had something called strength through joy and service, not self. So this is, let me post this in the comments. Service, not self. This was a Hitler propaganda line. And I was like, that's from AA. Like, but yeah, to start to see how things are labeled backwards is so, yeah, it's so empowering. Okay, Downtown Tasty, 100%. When my dad was dying, I walked to the liquor store and I bought him a six-pack of beer and cigarettes. He used to have an issue with alcohol. Why not make him more comfortable? Yeah, I would have given Bill a drink and I would have felt good about it because that's what he wanted and he's dying. Like, how inhumane is that? Why, why shove a purity culture on him when he's dying? I mean, maybe that's like karma, right? Um, Savage Minnow says, sadly, I know enough Mormons that sounds like some LDS shit, the taking the drugs and the doctor letting you treat patients. I mean, come on. I have experienced God on psychedelics, yet I have never thought I should go and talk to people in the patients in the hospital who I perceive as diseased with my psychedelic revelation. Are you kidding me? Those are like for yourself and your own evolution, right? Like, I don't know. Could you imagine? So when I did ayahuasca, I suddenly all of a sudden appeared inside a UFO, and I was having surgery on my brain, and it really helped my brain because I was having a lot of brain problems. That's how I got diagnosed with autistic in the first place. I was really struggling with my brain for a long time. And so not anymore. I've really like nailed in a lot of things, like specifically nutrition, but other things too. But can you imagine if I went and wanted to convince a hospital or doctors to let me go talk to patients that I perceived as diseased and tell them about how I was in a rocket ship on ayahuasca and had spaceship, like what God told me the solution was? Like, what? It just is so bananas. And that's what he did. And there's literal instructions in the big book on how to do this. Kate says, his vision was so lame. If I ever do hallucinogens, I would want it to be original and not the Sermon on the Mount from the Bible. Rick says, is it legal that Bill gave hungover Dr. Bob 2 beers to settle his nerves before Dr. Bob's morning surgery? Wow. I don't even remember that, but that's insane. Good point. Kat, yes, he says it's an honest program, yet he was never honest. Oh my God, the hypocrisy. Cassandra, to the wives, basically says, deal with it and mind your business. Lol. I know. You know what? And I always say it this way because the way you say the words really shape how you think about it and feel about it, right? To the wives, it's like, just because your husband's an asshole doesn't mean you have a disease. This whole disease of Al-Anon and Al-Anonic and all this stuff, it's like, yeah. I mean, that could be a whole podcast. Actually, some of you guys told me you really like that podcast with Lily I did maybe like a month or two ago. I want to have her back on to talk about Al-Anon because she did Al-Anon as well. I think that'd be a great episode I don't have the Al-Anon experience, but yeah. Kovanova says, AA is 100% a narcissistic relationship. There's positives in both situations, and that's why it's confusing. Kat says, freedom is slavery, war is peace, ignorance is strength, 1984. Yes. Downtown Tasty, I think Bill knew he was a narcissist and just assumed that all people struggling with substance use disorders are also narcissists. That's why the program is the way it is. Yeah, it's specifically like a program designed to deflate you. And I don't know about you, and we're all different. And I don't even want to be in the category where I'm like shaming anybody who's been diagnosed narcissistic, right? Because we all like, I got my assessment, autism, ADHD, whatever, but like, I didn't need to be deflated when I got sober. I needed to be lifted up. I had a lifetime of being deflated, being othered constantly because I'm neurodivergent and didn't know it. Like all the sexual trauma I went through, especially starting at a young age, I needed to be lifted up. I needed to trust myself. I needed to learn how to feel comfortable in my skin. I didn't need to be in a can't say this word, self-diminution program. I didn't need to be like attacking my ego and that myself wasn't allowed and to abandon myself to God, to the program, whatever, and to outsource my thinking to a sponsor and to be made to feel that my thinking wasn't safe and that I couldn't ever want for myself or pray for myself or anything like that, or coerced into a religion. I needed to be like back in an empowered vibe. So Bill's program may be great for somebody who does need that self-deflation, and that's the reason why they can't get sober is because of an overinflated ego where maybe they're narcissistic or whatever. It's not for everyone, and that's really what I feel now. Remember, I read the book 5 years ago, but that's what I remember from the book, um Holly Whitaker's book on Quit Like a Woman. That's what I remember from her book is that Bill essentially, I don't know if she calls him a narcissist, but that perspective of what this privileged white man American needed to get sober is not what most of us or women need a lot of the time. Let's see. Blue says it would be fun to wear a sobriety bestie beanie to an AA meeting. Everyone will think it's cool, but they won't get what it's really about. Oh my God. That's so funny. People always, AA always says, you're just selling merch. You're only saying this to sell merch. You're using AA to sell merch. I'm like, bro, I've never sold merch one day in my life. It's so weird how they like hallucinate reasons why, like ad hominem reasons, right? Ad hominem reasons why I'm a bad person or I'm wrong or what I'm saying is invalid because of me personally, instead of actually looking at what's actually being talked about. Never sold merch once. Sorry about that, bro. Downtown Tasty says, I think it's hilarious how they justify the program by saying it worked for this guy, so we got to listen. Yet they dismiss what works for all of us. It's different, and the success rates are abysmal. You know what? I had a mental health professional. I think she's a therapist. I don't remember exactly. Yesterday in my comments on Facebook, said the saying, "That's not my experience. I loved AA." When somebody talks about harm in AA, is analogous to saying, like if somebody is saying I was sexually assaulted by this man or I was, abused by this person, say, I think they're a nice person. That's not my experience with them. It'd be as just as dismissive as that. I was like, whoa, there's all these people's perspectives just really like help me see things more clearly. I love that we're all vibing in the comments. If you're catching the replay, you're invited to comment below. Let us know what you think. Internet woman said, one time my sister told me that I needed to do more service. Meanwhile, I was severely struggling with PTSD, anxiety, and financial stress. They really think that service is the solution to everything, and that's just not the case. Yeah. Sorry to hear it. The freedom is slavery pillar from Orwell's 1984 is especially eerie with how well that describes how AA works. Yes. Yes, 100%. And then the people in AA think they're sponsoring because they love it, and they're forgetting that they're sponsoring because they're told that they'll die if they don't. Essentially, it's like the conditioning goes in, and we don't even realize our unconscious beliefs are totally aligned with AA ideology, and then we believe that we're doing everything because we're choosing it, but we're not. Downtown Tasty says, scary how similar Scientology in 1984 are with AA, especially with the auditing. Yep, telling your secrets so we can shame you, use it against you in 1984, where thinking is bad and slavery, surrender is freedom. Yeah. Ben says, listening from the UK, keep going with this channel. You're a great comfort to many of us who feel the same way as you, Bestie. Yeah, I think honestly, what was missing from my early deprogramming journey in 2020 was validation. And now we can validate ourselves, but it's that much harder, I think, to heal and evolve and move forward when we can't find that external validation. We don't need it, but it really helps. And so I'm hoping that by sparking conversations and everybody else joining in the comments, and if you're watching this on the replay, you can click a button on YouTube and see all the comments that are, need to remember to say this in the beginning of the video. You can see all the comments that happened during the live stream. So you can see all those too, not just the ones that happened on the replay. But by seeing everybody else, I just feel like it's so validating to see everybody else's thoughts. You're not alone in this. If, I felt like, why is nobody else saying what is so obviously true now? And I got to the point where I was finally like, fuck it, I'm just going to say it. Like, we deserve to know that we're not alone in this. And I fear that a lot of people, because they think they're alone in the leaving AA and escaping AA journey, that some of them quite literally don't survive. And so I love that we're feeling courageous enough to share our truth about this. And break our anonymity and deconstruct from the idea that we don't own our stories, we don't own our truth, and then we have to stay anonymous to a group that we don't even participate in anymore. Okay, Downtown Tasty says, at best, all AA is just a distraction and doesn't get to the root of the problem. Totally. At worst, it is harmful. I remember waiting for the part where they'd tell me how to manage cravings life, and it never came. Yep, 100% agree with that. Internet Woman says, humbled and constantly, except for just its emotional abuse. Yeah. Kat says, steppers must be on the DL under the belladonna too, and that's why they be hallucinating reasons. It is so funny how many assumptions are made. I mean, somebody yesterday, like their assumption was like the assumption of the day award because like they're like, you did they say Suboxone? Look, I don't know about all these like MAT meds, right? Like I don't know about all the meds people use to get off heroin or whatever. It was never my experience. I was never in a NA. I just literally am not literate. I don't know. I should probably do some research so I have a broader understanding of addiction outside of just alcohol, right? But they were saying like you are working for a pharmaceutical company selling Suboxone or something, and I'm just like all these assumptions. It's so bananas. But by seeing all the assumptions that these AA trolls make, it makes me even more clear to try to not make assumptions. Like, I don't know if Bill really asked for a drink on his deathbed, but if he did, I'd give it to him. But I do know that he was depressed and writing about how he had a ticket to happiness, and I do know that that's called Bill shit. That is Bill shittery, period. We got Bill boozled. Let's see. Yes, I would wear a beanie to a meeting. I wish mental health care was better because there needs to be better alternatives to AA. Yeah. But I think like what we're doing here is really raising the awareness. I think that because we're feeling courageous enough to leave comments and to speak our truth about this and the harms that we experienced or that we see in AA ideology, it's just it can slowly wake up some people. It took AA a long time to catch fire and to get globally spread. And anytime anything changes, especially a movement that's been so systematized and institutionalized, like it takes a while for change to happen. I mean, how long did it take for them to realize that germs are a vibe, to doctors washing their hands and using gloves before they like delivered babies or whatever? Even if you are familiar with President Garfield and how he died, he was assassinated, right? So President Garfield was assassinated and the bullet went in and didn't hit any major organs and in theory could have stayed in his body. Now you can't really go back and say it would have been history would have been different if this, but what he died of was like the sepsis and the infections that came because the doctor with bare hands not being washed, even though they already knew for like a decade or a period of time before that there's germs and you should wash your hands. They didn't believe in these invisible bugs. So he's digging in with his bare hands, unwashed hands, no gloves, trying to find the bullet. And then the president of America, you think would have one of the best doctors in America, right? And he died from infection. It took a while for that to catch on, that washing your hands is a vibe and that germs can be spread and that you don't want to stick your bare hand into someone's fucking back. Like now it sounds bananas, but we don't have the mainstream message out yet that AA ideology is harmful. It takes a while for things to catch on is my point. Bill Boozled. Yep, Bill Boozled. And Kate says, it's incredibly lonely to leave cults, so a community is important that validates our experience. I 100% agree. So to wrap it all up, the whole idea of sharing the message, not the mess. I think the most powerful thing, one of the most powerful things in reflecting upon this to kick off this conversation with you today was the reminder of how powerful the story that we tell ourselves is about us. I'll give you one little story before we leave. So I had a client that I was coaching a while back, came to me for anxiety. Most of my clients have come to me for anxiety, especially in the beginning because I had all the anxiety disorders and I got over them. And I talked about it a lot on the internet. My YouTube channel was all about anxiety for a while. And he was convinced he would never get better because of his childhood trauma. And it got to the point in our relationship where I was like, and he's my client, right? This is business. I said to him, do I have permission to be really annoying every time you tell me an excuse for why you can't improve your life? Specifically, every time you tell me that because of your childhood trauma, you will never get better with your anxiety. Can I go like this? It's going to be annoying. It's called a pattern interrupt, and the purpose is for me to help you rewire your brain and snap you out of the pattern that you're in so we can burn a new pathway in your brain so you can get fucking better. And he agreed because consent's a vibe. And for the next 2 months, every time he said, "Because of my childhood trauma," I'd be like, "Eh." It was so annoying. Um, and he got, the first couple of times he got frustrated and, it kind of hits your ego or it kind of makes you, especially when you really believe that because of your childhood trauma, you can never get better. And eventually he stopped telling that story. And eventually he started telling himself a new story. And that story had been locked so deep into his mind. It was like his identity. Because of my bad childhood, I will never get past this. And my belief is that a lot of anxiety, not all of it, but a lot of it, the way I look at it is it's like the system, it's an electrical system that is going off. And we just need to tune the system, regulate the system, calm the system, and we will be in a different place emotionally in our nervous system. And we won't be so much in the sympathetic. We won't be sympathetic dominance. We'll do more practicing techniques. We'll do things every day to change our nervous system. It's called homeostatic recovery when we think about like the burden of total stress on a nervous system. I've gone deep in the research. So when I'm telling him, I'm not just being annoying, although I am, I actually understand the nervous system on a very deep level. I started studying the nervous system in the year 2000. I did labs in psychology class where I would test people. I would measure their saliva, right? So I like went in deep into all this. But what I know is, although when I had all my anxiety disorders, my doctor told me I would never get better. And I decided at one point, I can't believe what my doctor is telling me that I'll never get better because I can't keep living like this. So I told myself a new story. And my new story was, even if I'm delusional, I'm going to believe that I have to get better, that I have to overcome my anxiety because I can't keep living like this. So I decided, even if the world tells me I'm wrong, I'm going to believe this because I have to. And what happened? Because I believed I was going to get better, I started taking all the action that built up to me overcoming. I overcame my panic attacks, my anxiety disorders, my freeway phobias, like my public speaking phobia, like dog phobia. And I overcame all of it. And it was because I told myself a new story. I started taking new action that changed my brain and gave me a new result. So after going to this guy for 2 months, my client, eventually he stopped telling the story because he didn't want to be right, because no one does, because that's really annoying. He stopped telling that story at first to me and then to himself, and then he started telling a new story. Maybe I can get better. Kirsten says she got better. Maybe I can get better too. And then he got better. He overcame his anxiety because he stopped telling the story of why he couldn't get better, learned helplessness, like the fatal progressive disease baloney. And he started telling a new story to himself about why he could get better. And that's what's on offer for us when it comes to share the message, not the mess. We get to choose the message. We get to tell ourselves a new story. We get to say, what if it is possible? And we get to start reshaping our brain around the story that we want to live. And we get to step into that. And to me, that is empowering as fuck. I don't know if you have anxiety, what's possible for you. All I know is when I start telling myself a new story about what's possible for me and I evolve out of a limiting story, I wake up to new pockets of freedom. And I want to always remember that the story that I'm telling myself is shaping my life. And I want to be conscious and deliberate about that. And that's what I feel like is super powerful here. a point that I wanted to make sure I made. Uh, Amelia says, brainwashing ourselves instead of letting a cult do it. Totally. Lavender says, 100%. And Amelia says, I get it and I'm here for it. Kat says, I relate to this client so much. Yeah. There's been many times in my life where I was like, I have to believe I'm going to be delusional. Like when I left AA, I was the same way. I'm going to be delusional and I'm going to leave even though I think I'm going to die because I can't keep doing this. This is bullshit. I have to just pretend it's fucking possible for me to change this thing because I can't keep doing this thing anymore. So I'm telling a new story. It is okay to trust myself. It is okay I can get better. I can improve. And you start breaking through the limits and then, yeah, our lives can change that way. Let's see. Okay, a couple more comments and then we'll wrap this up. Cause6037 says, finding you on YouTube has been extremely validating for my leaving AA journey. After starting to deprogram, I have dipped into my usual meeting just a few times and seeing it with new eyes. It's bizarre. Yeah, I feel like reading the comments on my Facebook page is really bizarre because I'm like, ooh, this is like experiencing the control and the cult from the outside and seeing it all. Like, it's definitely really weird to speak. I think of it like languages. To speak deprogram ease, but also to speak program ease. Like, can we call it program ease, like AA speak, like the AA language? So you understand the programming and you understand the deprogramming, and then to be experiencing the programming, it's like, but the people who are programmed who didn't do the deprogramming journey, they don't speak deprogram ease. They don't know what deprogram means, although they know that it's like, I don't know, I guess it's experienced as offensive or triggering. Internet woman says, I was diagnosed bipolar and told I would always need meds, but the meds made me feel brain fogged and terrible. And 2 years later, I feel better than ever without them. Really happy to hear that. I was told that the only way that I was going to make any gains in ADHD was by taking ADHD meds. They were pressured on me so intense. I got off the phone one time with the medical provider and I literally cried, and it was like the worst. Like, it was so bad, like the amount of pressure. And this is from someone who's been deprogramming, right? So I was like, I don't like the coercion into your medical solution. How about you ask me what I fucking want? And I just went into the data and I was like, well, why don't I try all the things that I can do myself before I go on to meds? Nothing against meds, but I don't want that as my option one. And so I went into light therapy. I literally I did it this morning. I put a fucking device on my head. It's right down here. And one of the things goes up my nose. I've told you guys this before. I've actually listed all my biohacking things that I use below in my YouTube videos, because one day I'm going to talk about them. I haven't really detailed them yet. But I zap my brain, and one goes up my nose, which zaps my prefrontal cortex. And it's 20 minutes. I do that 6 times a week. It's been fucking great. It turns out I don't need meds. It turns out there's just like movement, nutrition, light therapy. Fresh walks are good. Downtown Tasty, like looking at myself as a cellular being and taking care of my cells, including my neurons, and just what feeds and nourishes cells. It's a vibe. Okay, Downtown Tasty says, mind over matter is huge. I didn't get better until I told myself I can, and also who I am. I realigned myself and my values and broke free from the addiction cycle. 100%. The story we tell about ourselves is super important. It's like what steers the bus of our life. Where are we going? Well, what story are we telling about ourselves? Are we never going to get better? Are we always fucked forever? Are we powerless, disease, defected, all this stuff? Or are we empowered beings? Are we, like, what is the story we're telling ourselves? And so one thing that I've worked with my clients on all the time is like, we have to look at where we're lying to ourselves. Where in your thinking right now are you lying to yourself? And I asked you this very specifically, you who's watching this, right? Because this is what I ask myself all the time. Where am I currently lying to myself? What stories am I telling myself that limit me and that block me from my goals and where I want to go in my life? How can I flip the script on the story that I'm telling myself? Because if I don't believe that I can, I'm not going to take the action to do it. I'm going to sabotage myself. So we have to, well, my opinion is we have to change the story we tell ourselves. And when I do this work with other people and with myself, our lives change when we start telling ourselves a new story. Okay, now I'm a broken record. Gold Nugget says, there is zero way I can support non-harm reduction based ideology. Bye bye Oxford groupies, 100%. Downtown Tasty. I just don't see how they think it's helpful to tell people not to trust themselves, break them down, tell them that they'll be addicts forever, and go into groups that obsess over their worst old times. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like a religion. It's not a recovery path. It's like confession and all the religious things. Yeah, the pressure is insane. I had to quit. Diet, nature, reflection, meditation. Lavender Fox says, I don't use negative terms like alcoholic. How we talk to ourselves is very important. 100% agree. Kate says, part of my deprogramming was rewriting my story from rock bottom to my whole journey and what's true for me. Very, very powerful. I love that. Green Mountain Mama, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Bill was an asshole. Oh my god. I almost just, like, peed my pants a little. Oh, oh, oh. Namaste. Good one. Internet Woman 69 said, I will say my bipolar meds helped me at first, but while I was in manic, they are not at all bad, but I have found more natural ways to treat my bipolar. Yeah, the reason why I don't want to go to meds first, second, third, or fourth, and why I want to go to nature first and look at cellular health is because I was on anxiety meds. I was on Klonopin for 2.5 years for my anxiety. And in hindsight, I really needed to learn coping skills and I really needed to understand like mindfulness and how to be with my emotions and not be on meds. That the long-term solution was to learn how to cope with my emotions and my feelings and to process things, not to mask them further. And then to get off benzos was brutal. Something like 40% of the people who go on benzos, even only for 1 month, have moderate to severe withdrawal effects. Like it's kind of brutal. So yeah, there's a whole I don't want to be set up for having to come off meds again is part of my fear and my motivation to figure out natural ways to move forward. Now, there's nothing wrong with meds. Meds are fine. It's a choice, but I just want to make sure that I'm very like deliberate and conscious with what I do because you might have to pay tax on the back end. So I want to be mindful of that. And is there things that I can do? So you know what? I don't eat nachos anymore. Nachos is like my favorite meal, and I don't eat nachos. I haven't even had cheese in a year and a half. I'm keto. I'm on the keto diet and I'm dairy free and grain free. So it's a limiting diet in a way, but I don't think of it as limiting because it's given me a better brain than I've ever had in my entire life. So I've been on keto for 2 years and my brain has never worked this well ever. And I read all these studies beforehand about how it's a little bit of a tangent on tangent. I read all these studies about autistic children for 6 months or even up to, longer, like they really recommended 2 years, how their brains being on keto allowed their brain to heal, allowed them to get rid of like brain inflammation and all sorts of stuff in their brain. So their overall brain functioning improved also in very specific ways with the characteristic traits or however you want to look at it with autism. And so I thought, okay, great. So why don't I try this methodology that I've read some good science on? And my brain is working better than ever. And I didn't need to get on meds. I needed to clean out. Turned out for me, I needed to basically have the ability to take the trash out in my brain. And so being on the ketogenic diet and running on ketones instead of glucose biologically allowed me to improve my overall brain function over time. These are, you stack up one day at a time. You stack up the good habits, and over time, long term, you can have a different result. So I looked into it with a more practical mindset of how do I actually, without meds, set my brain up or my goal up to happen. And if I couldn't get it to work, I would have taken the meds, to be clear. I'm not against the meds. I just wanted to figure out if I could do it a different way because of my bad experience with getting off Klonopin. Let's see. JBC, peanut M&Ms are my keto killing vice. Yeah, there's a sacrifice, but, and this also goes to show about changing our lives, right? I have no willpower involved in not eating nachos or the things that I love because I know the pain of having my brain not work well and my sensory system being so hypersensitive that I'm constantly thrown off by it and having like all these struggles that are associated with like autism or ADHD, and then optimizing my neurology, my system, healing my gut, cleaning out my gut. I mean, there was like, I stopped doing it a couple of months ago, but for like, I don't know, like 9 months, I was making yogurt with very specific probiotics and really working on rebuilding my gut and stuff. So I just went like very biological about it and was like, let's do everything that I can learn through, I don't know if you want to call it biohacking or like understanding cells to completely optimize my brain and see how I go. And I shot out about a year ago, like almost to the day, mid-January last year. All of a sudden, my brain was just like bounced out thriving. And I've woken up for the past year, I've woken up at the latest 5 a.m. every single day, if not even like 3:30. Sometimes I've woken up at 2:30. I have a whole different brain now. And I don't know if that would have happened if I would gotten on the ADHD meds. Again, not that they're bad, but my intuition is like, let's try to figure this out. What can make a brain improve if that's my problem? And let me go through and try it all and let me see. Big tangent here on the tangent. But the point is that I don't feel like I'm sacrificing and there's no willpower in it because the benefits are so great in my mental clarity, in my focus, in my energy, in my cognition, in my even my intellectual capacity, um, ability to make a lot of content, like whatever, like in my intellectual life, it is so much better that it's way more beneficial than any 5, 10-minute, 15-minute satisfaction I got from eating foods that I no longer eat, right? Like it's when we anchor on what we're moving towards, like which is like the Alan Carr easy way to quit drinking, it really helps us make the big changes that can be hard, that can shift our entire life. Let's see. Steve, I was on Xanax for 12 years, 60 a month. It can be hard to come off of the benzos. Kat, I do pescatarian, dairy-free keto. Do you eat all kinds of meat to do keto? I do. Yeah, I was a vegetarian for a year and a pescatarian for 10 years, basically my 20s. And my body really thrives on meat. And yeah, when I eat, I don't want to offend anybody here. When I eat steak, I can't even tell you. It's like all of my cells feel so happy. It just nourishes me in a way that nothing else does. And organic, and I try to eat really clean and just my whole body feels so much better. I've done so much to optimize my health. I've learned so much about it because I've, struggled with it. And I just do what I can do to make my body be as healthy as possible. And the reasons why I didn't eat meat is because of, I don't know, because of animals, And the reason why I do eat meat is because I really struggle and suffer if I don't. And yeah, I do find that red meat specifically really nourishes and my body really thrives off steak. Lavender, I get terrible brain fog on too many carbs. Yeah, I don't have brain fog at all anymore. Everyone's different. I don't know the path for you. I tried things for myself. And if you can imagine how much I've researched deprogramming and cult recovery and all this stuff, I've done even more research on autism. And I looked at every single angle, every single thing. And then I went all in on the stuff that looked the most effective to me based upon the data. And I've gotten great results for me personally. I don't know what anybody else should do. But for me, I was like, you know what? I've been struggling so fucking much with my brain. I'm really going to like dive in and make this like a master's level project or something. I'm going to do a thesis on this shit. I'm going to figure this shit out. Because anybody that I would tell that like I'm struggling in these specific ways or autism or whatever, they would just say, you're not autistic. And I'm like, okay, this isn't helpful. I'm just trying to get my brain better. Like, and for me, it wasn't about just accept your autism and just be love your neurodiversity. I'm like, no, that feels to me like, and not that that's wrong, but it felt to me like that was accepting my alcoholism and just like, I was like, no, I actually want my brain to work better. And I know about neuroplasticity and it's possible. And I believe there's some people who really think that a lot of mental health has to do with like our overall brain health anyways. There's a lot of toxins in the environment these days. And so becoming more aware of toxins in general, really learning about a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of improvements. There's a lot of hope out there in improving our mental health and outside of religion, AA religion. In just like the basic ways, even going for a walk for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, or even 30 minutes a day. And if there's some trees on that walk, it's even better. There's just simple, you just stack these simple habits over time, and it can really help us start to shift our lives in a positive direction. Steak equals love. Yeah, yeah, it does. I can't describe it. Like there's literally no other food has made me feel that way, I think, in my entire life where these days after I eat a steak, within 5 or 10 minutes, my whole body just it like vibrates with like it just feels right. It's kinda like also that feeling when you do, like, a good yoga class and you're kinda in touch with your soul or you're not really thinking a lot and you just feel in alignment or something. Sometimes things just feel right, and there is no right answer, but it's kinda like what feels right to me in this season. When I was a pescatarian, that felt right in that season, and right now what feels right to me in this season is being keto the way that I am. It feels right to me in this season. The seasons change. So it's like honoring where we are and doing what we are. I'm no longer recovering from anything. I'm at like a good level, but now I still want to optimize things. I have areas I want to reconstruct in my life and stuff. Um, Kate says, I choose a job that keeps me mostly outside in nature. It's amazing. I love that. How do you cook your steak medium rare? No, I like it like more cooked. I don't know. I'm kind of funny about it. I don't like it. I don't like anything. I don't like it raw. More on the cooked side. Um, there are a few trees I visit on my walks depending on the route. It's so regulating. Yeah. I think it's just finding out what works for us, and then that whole idea of like keeping your eyes on your own yoga mat, like not trying to judge other people for their paths, just try to do what's right for us, listen to our inner voice. I know a lot of AA ideology was to knock us out of our intuition, listening to our bodies, trusting ourselves, thinking for ourselves, or at least that our thoughts aren't to be trusted, right? And I just feel like the more I tune into myself, it's like I know what feels right for me. The way that my body feels tells me what feels right for me, whether it's a certain relationship or a boundary that needs to be placed or whatever it is. So there's just like so much wisdom inside of our bodies if we just learn to listen. And again, I think it's a skill. If you're in early sobriety, it might be harder to do that because alcohol damages interoception, our ability to feel what's happening inside of our body, and that rebuilds, that recovers on its own. Plus, when we develop the skill, like emotional regulation skills or mindfulness of our body skills, we become more skilled over time and it becomes easier to listen to what's happening in our body, discern like intuition between fear. And we might bumble sometimes, but it's all just skills and we get what we practice. We know this from AA. We practiced those slogans and they became our life for a lot of us. We can practice other things. So I'm probably going to stop there because now I feel like I'm bambling. But I do love when we go on tangents and we kind of all vibe together and I see the comments and we're like, okay. Um, that's very wise intuition. Yeah, trusting ourselves. I'm just going to take a couple of breaths here. You're welcome to take a couple of breaths too. All right, one more. I'm going to take a third breath here. I always feel a little calmer and more centered after 3 breaths. It like shifts me. There's so many tools available to us, and it's safe to choose the right tool. All right. I hope you have a um, yeah, great rest of the day. You get to choose the story that your life is guided by. And if you don't choose that story, you might be living by somebody else's story. You are powerful. It's safe to trust yourself. And make sure you choose the story that you want to cast over your present life and your future life. We are powerful as fuck. And anybody who tells you you're not powerful is trying to control you. That is my belief. It's safe to trust yourself. All right. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you're watching the replay, join the conversation in the comments. All right. Bye, guys.